All right. So first things first, I guess, can people hear me? Because that is always an important first step. Let me know in the chat below if you can. I've got a whole stack of notes here because it has been a crazy day. Now, I'm going to apologize a little bit in advance because I might be a little bit incoherent because I have been catching sleep in tiny little fragments for several days, and that is not really a healthy way to live your life. I'm also going to share this wonderful picture of a turkey that was, I guess, a Cthulhu turkey. It's kind of messed up that was in my notebook. So I posted about this on Twitter, but this was an entertaining landmine. But I was able to avoid it because I saw it there. But yeah, no, that was just kind of a side moment there. Today was interesting because I don't know what happened today. Uh, I kind of have gotten confused as to which side whose attorneys are on. Are Johnny Depp's attorneys still on Depp's side, and are Amber Heard's attorneys still on Amber Heard's side? Well, Johnny Depp's attorneys did a great job today. Um, Amber Heard's attorneys, I just don't understand. Um, all right, so let's talk a little bit about what happened here because it was really strange. So first thing they do is they call up Bruce Whitkin, who is the old bandmate, and I don't know what they thought that he was going to accomplish here. They talk about jealousy, but not violence. He's yet another person who didn't see any violence. Juror H didn't really like the reference of the drug use, so that I guess scored something of a minor, but I don't think that's a big deal. Um, Juror B was taking notes about the concerns about Depp's health, but by and large, people were bored through this one. By and large, people were not super engaged with this one. And I will give the warning here that I gave on Twitter, which is I appreciate all super chats and super stickers. I am super tired, and ultimately, I am not going to be able to get to covering the super chats on this stream. So I will save them all and cover them in a future stream. But if this is something that bothers you, where you're like, "Hey, Runkle, please get to my super chat right away," what the heck? Um, then please don't send it because I just can't. I'm gonna need to get some sleep tonight, or I will literally die. That's just the straight up thing. Now, today was almost entirely video depositions, and I can tell you the jury is hating the video depositions. They just hate them. And to be fair, so do I, because they're super boring and it's super hard to stay paying attention, especially with limited sleep. And I get the feeling that the jury is also on limited sleep. There was a lot of yawning. Um, there was some actual sleeping, I think. I think one juror was actually taking naps. And so that's not a good thing. Certainly not. And I think that's not a good thing for Amber Heard's side because really what we're looking at here, oh, and I'm bringing in a guest here. So, sort of a guest. I'm actually the guest when we get right down to it because this is Rob from Law and Lumber. I'm staying at his place right now, and he's actually provided the stand that the webcam is on because previously it was on my laptop, which really had the up the nose cam. So, and this was just it's a couple of pieces of scrap wood nail tacked together, and it's working pretty good, I think. Although still I'm sort of finagling around. I'm sort of used to my home system, and so everything is a little weird. But my life is chaos right now. Um, one of the other things was that Juror H, that's the 50-something woman when we're dealing with Bruce Whitkin. He made a comment about when you're somebody like Johnny Depp, everyone around you wants something. And at that point, Juror H actually sort of looked around and looked over at Johnny Depp and gave him what I read as a very long, um, sympathetic look. And I took that to mean that she actually thought that this was, she's feeling bad for him. She's feeling some sympathy. She's feeling that this is an unfortunate situation. And that is not something that Amber Heard's team wants the jury thinking. They want the jury thinking that he's a villain and a monster. And if they're rousing emotion about him having, some loneliness in his life, it really doesn't bode well. I mean, I think that Juror H in on previous nights has been pretty poker faced. Today, I think she was a little tired, and I think that it was leading her to actually let the mask slip. Rob, you'd agree when you were in there, Juror H was super poker faced. Yeah.
Yeah, she was, and I actually kinda wanted to see if you could kind of tell the chat about this one because, um, when there's a live witness in the box, the jury is super aware of their own behaviors and body language, and instead they're looking at video depots all day long, it's a kind of a chance for the jury. They don't feel the same pressure as they would if there's a live person right there, so you can kinda see more body language. Did you see any of that today?
Yeah, although some of the jury is still really poker faced. Juror F, it's not so much a poker face, he's just got a permanent kind of grouchy expression. So you have to look for some other giveaways. Juror A is pretty reluctant to give much away, although he's been expressing some disapproval at different points. Um, they're just a really, I mean, I think that they were told to avoid giving away too much through their expressions. And I think that they've been really trying to follow that and doing the best they can, but still letting some things slip. And I think I just kind of think, I wonder if they were just tired because there was a lot of yawning going around and maintaining that sort of poker face is effortful. I'm pretty sure I couldn't do that
I was
today.
gonna say, "Gee, they're tired." Ian, how you feeling right now?
Yeah,
For those of yeah.
it's funny because I was talking. I'm getting messages because I guess the other thing I'll mention is my channel subscriber count has exploded. We were out earlier. We had a sort of celebration dinner out here, and but I'm getting messages from all sorts of people I know going, "Oh my god, I didn't know you were doing whatever," and that's been kind of wild. But yeah, it's been tiring and like explaining to people like friends were like, "How did you get in?" And I'm like, "Well, I slept in a sleeping bag on the sidewalk in front of the courthouse."
I mean, I disagree. So you guys know the book Lord of the Flies? That's what the line is like, and there's a symbolic conch that gets passed around, and Ian controlled the conch shell for, like, the longest period of time and kinda created the rules for the line.
I didn't really. That really has to go to somebody else. I tweeted about her. I've got a picture there. She's been doing the numbering system, and it's actually worked really well. My contribution to the line remaining orderly today was I bought some coffee and hot chocolate and donuts, and I figured that everybody would be a little happier being caffeinated because there tends to be some tension at that like last couple of hours before 7 a.m. because that's when you get people who show up at like 6:30 thinking, oh right, they hand out wristbands at 7, so I'm going to be good, and they see that the lineup goes from here till Spain, and they go, oh well, I'll just cut in front. uh,
Mm.
yeah, that's
Mhm.
where some of the
How'd that go
tension
over?
comes up. Not well. Today, actually, because everybody was sort of on board with the numbering system, pretty good. Because when somebody shows up late and is like, "Hey, I'm going to try to wedge in," everybody knows who's supposed to be there and who's not, and so you can be like, "Nah, back of the line," and they can't kind of weasel their way in, which I think is a big thing there. Because I mean, if you're sneaking in and you haven't sort of taken a number and so forth, then potentially you're taking a spot from somebody else who was trying to get in, and yeah,
I
it's
mean,
tough. So
it's like being a young attorney. You have to make your bones. Like you have to sit through the chaos and you got to sit through that for a long period of time. And doing that, you learn the lesson. You come back, you do it the right way, and then you're in line, you're in court, and you end up where you were sitting, which is in the front freaking row, watching the
yeah,
testimony.
yeah, and I mean, I'm really glad to be able to get a view like that, because it's really I think it's really important to be able to see what the jury is up to and what they're thinking. Um, Ultimately, as much as we can say, hey, this is what we think as lawyers, the jury's going to decide based on jury things. And to a certain extent, like, what goes on in the head of a juror is a mysterious and scary wilderness. So, you can think at any point this is what the jury should do, but they might be thinking something else. So until you actually see the jury, you don't know if how they're reacting and what's going on. Like, when
Mhm.
Amber Heard cries, is the jury skeptical, or are they, crying along with her? That tells you a
Yeah.
ton about where the case is going to go.
And you were telling me earlier, and people in the chat might not know, but was it one of the jurors actually took their one of the masked jurors took their mask off at some point in time today's proceedings?
Yeah. So he seemed to be having some irritation with the mask. He was sort of itching it, and he'd been masked and was really hard to read. And he took it off for about an hour and a half before lunch break, and then after the lunch break, he had the mask back on. So I got a little bit of an opportunity to see him, maybe get a bit more of a read on him, although he's still super poker faced. Like, I swear, these guys are the poker champions of Virginia. So
I mean,
it's
but that's what you want out of a jury. You don't want to be able to have a jury that's telegraphing everything. I mean, you want them to take the testimony seriously and wait till they hear everything.
yep, that's true. So that is, kind of important. And yeah, it's but at the same time, I would kind of like to get a read on what he's thinking. But he's tough. That said, he has been offering some. There were some tells today from that juror, and they weren't even just stuff that needed the mask to be off. Some of those tells were sort of casual, unguarded moments where there was a larger gesture being made. So yeah, I was talking about Bruce Whitkin. I don't think he moved things all that much when he started getting into talking about the conflicts. Juror I, who I think is very much decided, like I think he's actually been napping at some points in this proceeding, but he was awake during that. He had his chin up. He had sort of this combative kind of expression. I think he didn't like hearing this notion that Johnny Depp might be jealous at times, or that sort of thing. When he said that there was no escalating violence, Juror D was nodding repeatedly to that. Juror E was scanning the gallery. She's been doing that a lot. She's been really focusing on what the people in the gallery's reactions are. And keep in mind, the gallery is like 98% pro Depp. So um, there have been some Heard supporters. They just don't tend to announce that they're there, which is unfortunate that it's probably right, because or that they're probably correct that it's a bad idea. I don't like the idea that anybody is going to get intimidated or anything like that. I think that the courtroom should be open to anybody with any views, but they've been trying to sort of be a little on the down low. So they are there, but yeah.
So I want to address a comment that came through that you scrolled past really quickly.
Oh yeah.
Um, Apparently you were spotted behind some alpacas.
I did see some alpacas on 2 different days. Somebody apparently, I got to get a picture of it, but somebody says that I was in a picture of Camille Vasquez where she's petting the alpacas. I'm apparently in the background. So
I think
that's
that's
a
your new
thing.
that's your new profile pic.
There you go.
Like
Um,
Camille Vasquez and I in a picture with an alpaca. I think that's a seller.
I also got a selfie or a picture. It wasn't a selfie because someone else took my camera to take the picture, but there's a picture of me with alpacas. So I got to get that off my phone and put that on Twitter or sometime tonight because
Yeah.
I feel like the internet will explode over Runkle with alpacas.
Yeah. Greetings from Virginia. That's a postcard.
It is. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't think Witkin moved anything that much. If any juror did, it would have, or if any witness today did, I think that that it would have. But yeah. Then they next bring up Joel Mandel, who was kind of interesting. That's the sort of financial guy who's talking about, hey, I didn't steal the money, I swear. And the judge was not terribly interested in his testimony. She was busy, sort of busying herself with other stuff. And I mean, fair enough. The judge isn't the one who needs to pay attention to it. Juror I was basically asleep. Juror E was still staring at the gallery. Juror D was tuned out completely. But Juror C had an interesting moment. There's one of the things that Mr. Mandel said was that Depp's behavior started to become more erratic and less responsible around the time of the Rum Diaries. And what happened around the time of the Rum Diaries? Oh, right. Did he meet somebody around then? It's perfectly fitting with the notion that Mr. Depp was abused because, his life starts falling apart when Amber Heard comes into it. It's not like he was in a full-on free fall and then Amber Heard came into his life. It's the timing is Amber Heard, then chaos. And we also heard from Witkin that it was Amber Heard, and then he starts being disconnected from all of his friends and support group, which also really fits with the whole abuse issue, right? Because people being abused often get separated from their support networks. So it's like, those aren't great details. And I think juror C was really the only one who caught that one. That was the only juror who I saw actually sort of perk up at that. But I mean, they're going to talk to each other in deliberation. So if juror C caught that one and no one else did, juror C can tell everyone else, and that becomes a problem. Um, the jurors, I don't think terribly like any of the financial discussion because there's a lot of discussion about like, oh, people have 100K expenses a month and so forth, and the jury really doesn't like or seem to like hearing about how much these people are spending. Um, and that applies on both sides because there were some moments where Amber's team was talking about like, oh, this how much money Amber's potentially losing. They didn't care. Like they're not super sympathetic about this super rich girl losing out on millions of dollars. There really wasn't a good play for sympathy on either side to be had over the money issues. Another thing that I thought was interesting is that he goes and basically accuses Depp of lying about him because Depp had said, hey, listen, they stole, he lied about filing all these tax returns and, and they just go, oh, well, the jury didn't seem to care. The jury just kind of went, whatever. They just didn't react. All right, so on to our next witness, Adam Waldman.
Oh.
What the hell? This one, not only did I think it was a bad idea on Amber Heard's lawyer's part, it actually kind of pissed me off, and I'll explain
Yeah,
why.
me too. Like I was
Yeah,
furious.
this is actually where we see juror A with his mask off, and the jurors actually got a lot more interested at this point, and I'll sort of explain why. We had a day
Well,
of
well,
video
wait. First,
depositions.
first, first. Tell,
Oh yeah,
tell. You have to back up. I know
yep,
you're running on fumes, so I'm going to help guide you here.
good, good,
Who is Adam Waldman? Adam Waldman is the attorney for Johnny Depp.
yep,
Adam Waldman is the basis for Amber Heard's counterclaim. Adam Waldman made the claim that Amber Heard and her friends created this scene and perpetrated a hoax to try and gain notoriety while at the same time crushing Johnny Depp. The
right,
entirety of Amber Heard's counterclaim rests on a statement made by Adam Waldman, who again is Johnny Depp's attorney, who shares attorney-client relationship with Johnny Depp. I think this sets up for where you're going, Runkle.
yep, because yeah, the attorney-client privilege thing is a big deal. Just for the chat's benefit, attorney-client privilege is basically an iron wall, and unless you punch a hole in it, now there's some ways you can do that. There's the fraud slash crime exception. So if I hire a lawyer and I'm like, hey, you're my lawyer, you're going to help tell me how to commit a fraud, and then we're going to rip off some other people. Those discussions are not going to be privileged because we are engaging in crime. So that is one way you can get around that. Or the more common way is I can waive privilege, and that can be either intentionally, where I just say, like, I waive privilege with respect to this, which doesn't happen all that often, but it does sometimes. Or you can waive privilege by just refusing to shut up about it, and sometimes that happens too. Uh, but absent that, like, privilege is a real wall. It makes that evidence inadmissible, and so they just can't even ask about it. And yet, what we saw was a lot of them asking about it.
Well, back you up for a second. Who was
Yep.
conducting the cross? Who was conducting the interview? And tell us how the jury responded to that. You told me that, and that changed a lot of things for me.
Well, I don't actually remember who was conducting it. It was
You mean it
um,
wasn't Elaine Bredehoff that was asking the questions of Adam Waldman?
I don't think it was.
It
Now,
was,
I'm
buddy.
just was it? Yeah, they certainly didn't like her efforts. They didn't like, but what sort of initially starts? They lead in and they're asking these questions, and the jury's perking up because these video depositions are extra boring because they cut out all of the objections. Sometimes you hear like object, and then it just cuts to an answer or another question. And when you're a juror, the objections are the fun stuff. That's where you get to see the lawyers like fighting with each other, and you get these little mini battles, and that's interesting, right? It's something to break up the monotony of some witness talking about whether or not Johnny Depp was losing money. And it's like, oh no, a rich rock slash movie star is spending more money than he's earning. That never happens. Like, come on. And I mean, I kind of feel like many of us would if we suddenly got a $600 million deal to make movies, spend a ton of it. I mean, it's a thing, right? So, yeah. So the jury is perking up because now they're seeing these fights, and what they're hearing is, "Hey, I want to ask you this question," and then Ben Chu gets to step in and be like, "Nah, you don't get to ask us that. We're just going to shut that right down." And that's fun for the jurors, but eventually, most of the jurors kind of got to this point where they were like, "We're just not going to get any information out of this, so we can tune out again." Like, we are super tired, we're super bored, we can just stop paying attention. Juror B, on the other hand, this was having the time of his life. He thought this was hilarious because he was really enjoying every time they ask a question and they get shut down. So for Juror B, this was comedy gold. Everyone else was kind of like, whatever.
I mean, for example, for the chat's purposes, some of the questions were so ridiculous. It was, didn't you instruct Didn't Johnny Depp instruct you to issue that statement calling this a hoax? That's clearly privileged information. So it was, I instruct you not to answer because of attorney-client privilege. So, and then Elaine would come back, step back, and try to rephrase it. Well, you didn't not instruct him, or you didn't not receive instructions, and it literally was comedic gold.
Yeah, it was like, you know, how many, reverse negatives does it take to, make this proper question? Well, you didn't not tell him to not retract the statement, right? It's like, yeah, still objectionable, right? So so she spends a whole lot of time trying to go with this. Now, here is where this is really bullshit and where this really kind of pisses me off. Because what she's trying to do is in order to make out their counterclaim here, what they have to establish is basically that Mr. Waldman's statement is Depp's statement, and that something he's that this statement essentially comes from Depp's mouth, but is relayed via Waldman. And they're never going to be able to do that because of the privilege issues, right? That's
Yeah,
just not going to happen.
yeah. It's like me telling you, Runkle, go out in the street and go call my neighbor a POS, and
Yeah,
then if you are my attorney, it's them asking you as my attorney, well, didn't Rob tell you to say that? And you're going, that's a privileged communication. And I can't really tell you if he did or didn't tell me to do that. But they're trying to tie that back to Johnny Depp as if Johnny Depp was the one that said it himself.
yeah,
So it's they're trying to imply and trying to persuade the jury via a completely misleading argument that this attorney who is properly acting under privilege is somehow the mouthpiece of Johnny Depp.
yeah. And it's absolutely ridiculous. It's what they're trying to do is imply that the non answer, the you can't ask that because of privilege, implies that really it's Depp. And that is an improper inference. That is something that the court, that shouldn't be allowed. This was actually something that got the judge in Rittenhouse kind of hot under the collar with an analogous situation when they were trying to suggest that his asserting his right to not speak to the police implied that he had something to hide. It's the same thing. And I will tell you that, like, when I'm representing a client, sometimes you get calls going, hey, do you represent so and so? And my answer is always, I'm not answering that, because I don't answer if it's yes and I don't answer if it's no, because either way that's a violation of privilege, because I'm not going to play the 20 questions game. um, you know it's an issue. So it's not a question you can answer either way. uh, even if Depp didn't say to put that out there, answering that question is itself a violation of privilege, because then it necessarily enters into that attorney-client communications by establishing a negative within it. You
Yeah.
know,
And the craziest part of all of this is that Amber's claim, this is an essential element of the claim. They have to prove that Johnny Depp was the one making the statement. This is an essential element, and they're trying to prove it via, and I think Runkle and I agree on this one, they're trying to prove it by misleading the jury to extrapolate a fact that doesn't technically exist from openly misleading testimony. I mean, it drove me nuts, and I know it drove you
yeah.
nuts too.
Oh, it's basically trying to lead the jury into error, into legal error, and they should not be doing it. Um, it really actually made me think a lot less of Elaine, because I have said on a lot of, I've said a lot of the time that I think she's normally a good lawyer, just stuck with a bad client, and she's, doing the best she can with it. This is greasy. This is behavior that I just do not approve of. And it's, it's like if you find out that your good friend, steals from church donation boxes.
Oh
It's
God,
like,
that's a bad. That's a rough. Now I feel guilty. Like that's bad.
it's just one of those things where you'd be like really hard pressed to look at them the same way. And that's kind of how I feel because I was like, you know, maybe she's just stuck with a bad client. She hasn't been doing anything like blatantly unethical or improper or, greasy. But I feel like this is in the greasy territory, and it really
Yeah,
makes me less inclined to give her the benefit of the doubt.
yeah. And
So,
stealing a question from your chat. What if any questions did Elaine ask twice?
all of them. Like the whole thing was basically just trying to ask, so Johnny Depp told you to do this
Yep.
for, 30 minutes. And the jury was not happy with it. The jury was looking there like they were feeling like their time was wasted. And I mean it was. That was what the first part of it was. But then there's a second phase of that questioning. And this is where things get stupid. Because what the hell?
Yeah, I like Tired Drunkle. This is my favorite.
So, this is what they managed to establish in the second phase. They put to the jury a whole lot of times the Amber Heard and perjury in the same sentence. And they do this like 60 times, like, hey, Amber Heard perjury, Amber Heard perjury. And then they take it a little further and they take it all the way up to so this nice lawyer who's actually seeming like he's coming off like a really pleasant, reasonable kind of guy. He tells a couple of jokes that are kind of, that actually landed a bit. Um, he just kind of seems like, inoffensive and diligent. And he thinks Amber Heard committed perjury and thinks it enough that he took it to the police. Why you would ever want to put to the jury that a lawyer thinks your client committed perjury and took it to the police is just beyond me. In
And to put,
fact,
yeah,
if the
multiple
other side
times.
if the other side wanted to suggest this about your client, I would be going nuclear. Like I would absolutely be going nuts. And, just and yet they scored that on their own net. Just
Dude, the look of confusion on your face right now is fan freaking tastic. Like the frustration. You used the analogy earlier today that I freaking loved. They were dribbling the ball towards the goal. They went a long way. It just happened to be the wrong damn goal.
yeah. And it's like they're sitting there like it was so bizarre. And I mean, the other thing is that the jury was kind of liking him in several places. He mentions that he gets this Twitter suspension. And, Amber Heard's lawyers were going and kind of giving him grief over this Twitter suspension. I don't know where they thought they were going with it. Juror H actually smiled a little bit over the suspension. She thought that was amusing. Juror F made a big kind of angry face at the Twitter suspension. He didn't like the notion of Twitter suspending people. I kind of feel that this is around some, the whole politics around Twitter right now. So, but that he was personable. Somebody says I thought he was banned for life. He was suspended for life, which is the same thing. Um, the gallery laughed when he said, "Well, that did I take it to somebody with a social media account? That's everyone on Earth." Like the jury thought that, or people thought that was funny. Uh, why you'd sort of talk this guy up and then be like, this guy that is just kind of been super pleasant thinks our client is a perjurer. And the other thing I think about when I consider this is that the jury has been very strongly admonished every single day not to go on social media, not to go on anything. And the only way to do that is essentially to get home and find a rock in your backyard and crawl under it, because everywhere on the planet right now is talking about the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial.
Yep.
If you get on the bus, you're going to hear people, overhear people talking about it. If you turn on the radio, if you turn on the TV, if you watch news, wherever you go, if you just, open up a random web page, if you go on a Minecraft server, you may end up, overhearing content about this. And
Yep.
so all it takes is for one of them to hear the sort of news story that's been going around about the possibility of Amber Heard being investigated for perjury in the UK. And today you've just heard perjury, 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 perjury. What do you do with that? I
Hmm.
feel like I feel like this was not only a small mistake, this was a major blunder. And it's a major blunder that's in a, like, why would you trade your good standing to blunder your client into? And I feel like this one has to be driven by Amber herself, like
No,
Amber personally.
and you got a hint from that from her own testimony. She during part of her testimony, Vasquez is asking her basically, so you think the sentiment has turned against you? And Amber Heard openly says, look it up online yourself. And in that moment, I was super pissed because that was essentially instructing the jury to break the admonishment that they've been given. It was
Yeah.
basically telling the jury, go look me up on social media. Well, then the next day, literally the next day, you put on somebody who's basically saying, Amber Heard and perjury and UK trial and perjury. And then we get to the coup de grace, which you're getting to next, which is the hashtag nonsense.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, it was so bad but yeah, they just were not gaining anything from that one or from this particular witness. But what I think here is that Amber Heard has to be running the show. Amber Heard has to be thinking she's winning. And from what we've heard, if Dr. Curry is correct, she's got the diagnoses to be just that off base, to think that the jury's on her side, that everything's going peachy, that this is, and that she's trying for the stretch goal. She's trying for the bonus objective here, where not only does she want to defeat the claim, she wants to win the counterclaim. And the only way they do that is with this guy, but they don't do it even with that evidence unless the jury makes a mistake, essentially. But this was such bad evidence. And personally, if I'm Amber Heard's lawyers and if I am able to properly, advise Amber Heard and she follows my advice, then what we say is, you know what, we're just going to lose this counterclaim. I would rather lose the counterclaim rather than tender this evidence. Like, every day, all the time, that is the right call. So I didn't understand that one at all. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Let me pause you for a second here, buddy,
yeah,
because you, sir, Mr. 100,000 subscribers, have 27,000 sitting in the chat right now. Nope.
I don't even have
Runkle,
the
stop
brain power
breathing.
to process that number.
Yep. Runkle, stop breathing. Everyone, Runkle, stop breathing.
I just don't have the brain power to process that number right now. It's got too many
Yeah, buddy.
digits.
You did
Um,
great. So, who's the next witness?
Next witness was, I think it's Detective Sandanaga. I wrote down Sandanaga, but I didn't actually remember to write down her title properly. But so I'm not sure what her rank was. But right at the beginning, everybody was writing down what she said. She comes out and she's a police officer, first thing, and she's an important police officer. So lots of interest in that regard. But So I see people writing stuff down. Jurors D, H, C, B, G, E. I didn't write that down in order. It was just kind of as my eyes panned around. They were all writing pretty heavily as she starts out. Um, there was this moment fairly early in where they ask her a question and then it does one of those hard jarring cuts. I also don't know who edited these deposition videos because the editing was not good. It cuts at really jarring places and it like there's places where they like repeated a question and I was like, okay, that's great. Um, and it bothered the jury whenever that happened. But it cut here to like they ask a question. I didn't actually manage to write down what the question was. And then it does a hard cut to her confused face. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. Well, thank you. Um, that made the jury amused. They thought that was funny. But pretty soon, the photographer in like the courtroom photographer was yawning. Um, Jurors F, G, and H, who have basically been the paying attention superstars, they were still paying attention, but everyone else was tuned out and just not really listening anymore because she didn't have anything to say.
Well, and yeah, the entire purpose of her testimony was to try and impeach the officers that previously testified. The officers that said that they didn't take a note because there wasn't a fear, because it didn't look like anything happened. And then she gets up there and the attorney is trying to drag out of her that these officers were somehow wrong. And all she did was look confused and kind of saying, No, they were fine. We don't do these things."
Yeah, it's like, well, if we didn't see any signs of damage or of abuse, and then yeah, that would be exactly how we'd record this. And I'm like, cool. So the officers did what they were supposed to. Awesome. Like what? I don't know what they thought they would get out of her. Ultimately, I don't think that she's even going to be mentioned when the jury goes for deliberation. It's just going to
No,
be
what's
like,
the point? What's the point? She reinforces the officers. If anything, Depp's going to mention her.
yeah, it was just, and I mean, that's sort of the thing that we have here is that at closing, all of this evidence that Amber Heard has been calling, I kind of expect that we'll see Depp's team referring to, if anybody.
Yeah.
Uh,
So that was the cop. Who was up next? Because this now we
uh,
get into like this litany of witnesses that were like 10-minute increments. Like it was crazy this afternoon.
so next up, we had Mr. Schnell.
Oh, this
This,
is the tech Jesus. Like
yeah,
he
this is
literally
now this guy's got some impressive credentials. We hear first thing he's a child prodigy. He's got an invitation to go to undergrad at age 14,
no, no,
which
no, you missed that one. He had the invitation to teach, to be a
oh was it
professor.
oh so at age 14 he's got this invitation which he passes up because he wants to be he wants the high school experience. Um, I hope that was worth it. Um,
I think it was, buddy. I think he made a lot of money doing that.
fair. What is it? And then we hear about all of this. At this point, Juror A has remasked. We hear that he's got like all of this stuff. He name drops Stallone. This guy is a big deal in the tech field, right? I will absolutely say that from, assuming he's not BSing his, background. Uh, he's a big deal, right? And this guy's got a Wikipedia page. He's, you know, I can't mock the guy for his achievements because he is actually just a straight up solid guy in terms of what he's achieved. What he was trying to do today in court was some bullshit. I will say that. So there was a bit of a false start because the Depp's counsel basically tries to object to his qualification when what they really meant to do was to cross-examine him. And so when they go and say like, yes, we do object to his qualification, it's like, well, you didn't actually have a reason, and
I
yeah, it
mean,
was a waste of time.
I kind of understood that. He was objecting to the scope of his qualification. I think he was kind of saying that he was qualified to say that to testify to the general how the algorithms work and how they promote certain material. I think what he was trying to say was he's not qualified to say, and you're going to make this point when you talk about the facts that he gets
Yeah.
testified to. What he was not qualified to say was that messing on Twitter and making hashtags actually has a detrimental impact on one person.
Yeah. So, I mean, at this point, there's a couple of jurors who were really interested in his qualifications. They were really super listening, and that's jurors A and G. And they were interested to a degree that made me wonder if they might have some sort of, oh my God. Thank you for the heads up, because I would totally not notice. I'm just trying to, but they're, uh, I kind of wonder if they don't have some sort of IT background as possibly, their work, or maybe they just have an interest in computing, right? They're just, that this is just something that interests them and so forth. So the problem then is that he's actually not really like he's a computer expert, but what he's testifying to is not a computer's thing. The computer task he performs is actually pretty boring. And like it's pretty uninteresting. What he's actually doing is processing data. And I think that there was an objection to be made about his qualifications, but the problem that you get with these kinds of experts is that because they're super qualified at one thing, they sort of think that you can sort of move that qualification and put them into areas that they're not really properly qualified for. And I think that kind of happened here, because really this should have been some other kind of experts. So,
Hey,
but
Runkle,
yes,
Runkle, take a pause here for a second. Get
okay,
slow mode going on the chat, and I'll chat for a little bit, okay?
all right. I
Um,
don't know how I
so
do that here.
Well, you figure it out. I'll keep the chat occupied for a few minutes because this chat is flying, my friend. All right, so expert designations. Expert designations are weird because when you qualify an expert, there has to be like a scope of the designation where you qualify them. For example, if I want to expert, if I words, yes, if I want to designate an expert psychiatrist, I can say that this person's an expert in the field of psychiatry, and that gives them the ability to testify broadly to diagnoses. This is what this diagnosis is. Let's say I want to have that person testify to a specific person and diagnose that person. Then I have to narrow the scope of that qualification to qualify them as a forensic psychiatrist, someone who is tasked with and is an expert in actually going into someone's psych profile and diagnosing a specific person based on past experience and past evidence. In this regard, when you're talking about the guy that was testifying, Mr. Snell, there's no question this man has expertise in a lot of the algorithms. I mean, I think he was testifying that he's worked for basically every major social media giant in the world, and helped them develop a lot of their algorithmic software and how they track hashtags and popularity, and that gives him broad expertise. But the way they were trying to use him was a little bit different. They were trying to use him to identify specific hashtags or specific internet traffic, and to say that that traffic was more negative towards Amber Heard. And that not only that, but I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Uncle, but they tried to get him to essentially say that the use of this hashtag and the use of that statement by Johnny Depp's attorney geared so much negative traffic towards Amber Heard. He tried to liken hashtag justice for Johnny Depp as being akin to, anytime that hashtag was mentioned, that was akin to a negative attack on Amber Heard. And Runkle, you made a really good point earlier today on Alita's stream that I kind of want you to repeat for your chat.
Yeah. So the issue here is he's just like counting out, these basically there was you know, he was looking at these hashtags plus the words like fake, fraud, and hoax. And the problem is that you can't actually just run that. You can't actually just run that like as an algorithm and get any sort of useful data, because ultimately you can't tell which side somebody's on. I have seen pro Amber people posting on Justice for Johnny Depp as a hashtag because they want to argue with the Justice for Johnny Depp people. Like they go out there and they want to fight. They want to sort of argue the opposite point. And the other problem that you get into is that statements and their opposite end up looking exactly the same to their algorithm. So let's say I write down, I put, hashtag justice for Johnny Depp because I want to argue with Johnny Depp fans. And I write down, um, Amber is not a fraud. This is not a hoax. Hashtag justice for Johnny Depp, and so that's a pro Amber statement. That's but it still comes up as Amber, hoax, fraud, justice for Johnny Depp, and he'll flag that as. And so I made a point, and some people disagreed with me. I said that I didn't think the cross examination of this witness was all that great, because I thought that really they needed to sell that point and to really hit on it. You can't tell the difference between Amber is a fraud and Amber is not a fraud. So what is your analysis worth if it treats those two statements exactly the same way, which is nothing? It's hot garbage. I thought they really needed to hammer on that, and the lawyer was trying, but he really didn't understand, or he didn't have a good way of explaining perhaps this issue. And the way I thought that they should have done it is they would have had access to his data set. They could have pulled examples out of his data set and basically said, listen, how do you use this as an example of hostile towards Amber? That said, he had a real strong close. Really a strong finish on that cross-examination. Now, I kind of feel like it was an aborted cross-examination in the sense that I feel that he was trying to establish this issue. He was kind of fumbling around it and not succeeding. And so he jumped to that, the whole thing of, we all want justice here, and then finishes. It was a hand grenade. It was wonderful. And then he sits down, and it was the right time to sit down, because when you score a point that well, you sit down. But it would have been better if he'd been able to get through those issues and then score that point and then sit down. So that's why I feel like it was kind of a weaker cross. And I sort of said, this is the kind of cross-examination you get when you have a really good lawyer trying to tackle tech issues where they don't necessarily have the tech background. That's kind of my read on that. And I mean, when I say I think he's a really good lawyer, notwithstanding that I think it was a weak cross, if you're not a really good lawyer, you can't pull out of that spin where you're struggling in the cross and do that thing where he drops the bomb and then leaves. That is an excellent lawyer move. That is top shelf, maneuvering. So that I think was, that was kind of my read on that.
I mean, yeah, to be able to be struggling in that moment, and because when you get thrown off like that, like you might have a script of bullet points in front of you, getting yourself back to your bullet points is so hard because you kind of want to find a way to recover naturally. You don't want to go back to the next question because it shows the jury that you've been thrown off. So you try to find a way back, and when at some point in time you find yourself just floundering, you're in water and you're treading water and you have no idea how to get back to shore. The fact that he could anchor himself and get himself not just back to his notes, but to deliver that powerful, I mean, Ian, you said it best. You toss a hand grenade, turn around, walk away, sit down, let it blow up. Perfect.
Yeah, that was a real, the finish on that was a cool guys don't look at explosions kind of thing. Just pulls the pin, chucks the grenade, walks away, let it blow up in the background.
Yeah,
It
that was good.
It was a good finish, and it kind of did a lot to erase the weak, bit before there. So the other thing is they really fucked up here by this whole putting this witness up there to deal with the hashtags was such a bad move because it now lets the lawyers repeat the hashtags and it lets the
Wait, Runkle. What were those hashtags again?
justice for Johnny Depp.
Uh-huh.
Nobody likes you, or nobody likes Amber Heard.
And the coup de grace?
Amber Turd.
How did she respond when she heard that said in court?
So she was okay with all the others. Amber Turd made her twitch. When he said Amber Turd, she turned her head to him. So I've got her on a perfect profile. You can see like the muscles on her jaw were just clenched. She's blinking repeatedly. She's mad. And then she goes and, after that, she recovers, turns back, and then he gets to say Amber Turd again because he can pretty much say it as many times as he wants on this cross-examination. He's been given an opening. Like, you could never get up in court and call the opposing party a turd. Like,
it's too fucking good. How do you let that happen? You gave him excuse to call her a turd in open court on court TV multiple times. Why? How do you do that? How do you do that? Oh my God.
Other thing that is even worse than letting the opposing party call your client a turd in open court, is that let's look at what this evidence actually says. It says, oh my God, look how popular the Justice for Johnny Depp hashtag is. Look how many people out there are saying Justice for Johnny Depp. Look how many people out there are saying nobody likes you, Amber Heard. Look how many people out there are calling Amber Heard a turd. They've called evidence on look how unpopular our client is. Look how people are demanding justice for Johnny Depp. Hundreds of thousands of people are demanding justice for Johnny Depp. You could never call this evidence yourself. Johnny Depp could not say, we did a survey and everybody thinks Johnny Depp should win. They could not do a thing saying, like, a trending hashtag says justice for Johnny Depp. This would be utterly inadmissible and prejudicial. And Judge Karate was sitting there and had this like smirk on her face going like, how is this happening?
Yeah, like you know what you're doing, right? Like I think what's the line from what is it, Princess Bride? I think that word does not mean what you think it means. Like it's like you're saying something and you think it's selling. It is not selling the way you think it's selling. Like the entire world is just looking at this and going, did you just allow the opposing counsel to call your client a turd like 9 million times, like legitimately, and then sit down after you threw a grenade at your witness that was supposed to support all of your claims?
Yeah, it was just, I don't understand what the heck was about. Yeah. So, and then they've got Michelle Mulrooney, the family lawyer, and I don't know what the sort of deal was with that. I'm certain. Oh, or people are saying my mic is turned off. Can you hear me?
I mean, I've got you. I don't know if let me hang on. Let me flip over to give me 1 second.
All right. I'll just, hopefully the mic is working there properly. I mean, clearly they waived privilege with respect to that conversation, right? Because otherwise, how do you get there? But she didn't really have a whole lot to say about this prenup and this whole thing about like, oh, well, Johnny fired you. I was sitting there going, y'all spotting the ethical issue here, right? Because, one thing that I sometimes find yourself representing young accused, like children, when you do criminal law. And so their parents are the ones who are paying the bills. And the parents want to run the show and are often very surprised and quite upset that they don't get to run the show. And so you'll get parents coming in saying, I want to know what my kid told you. And I say, that's neat. No, because I represent the kid and not the parent. And so I can, part of my job may be to represent the kid against the parent. There can be situations, for instance, where the kid would very much not want me to tell the parents what's going on. I had one where the kid was alleged to have been involved in a pretty serious crime. And, on his own, it's like, what's your alibi? He's like, well, I was with the boyfriend that I don't want to tell my, parents about because they're super conservative and they won't like that. Okay, parents are never going to find that out. But sometimes parents, when they hear that this is, something that's going on, they say, okay, you're fired. And I go, you can't. They say, well, I'm not paying your bills anymore. And I say, okay, that's cool, but you still don't get to fire me. I'll go ahead and do this for nothing if that's what it takes. And if you take instructions from somebody else, especially a potential party with a conflict, because you're talking about negotiating a prenup or a postnup, there's a conflict with the other side. You simply cannot take instructions from them about being fired. Like, they basically just called her up to testify to an ethical blunder that made me
Yeah.
feel uncomfortable.
I mean, for example, and for the chat, I turned my mic down, so if it's too loud still, please blow up the chat. I know you will because there's like 32,000 of you in here. Let me see. It says Rob still loud. Okay, we're gonna turn that down a little bit more. Oh, now you guys are trolling.
Sorry, I am tired. Somebody
Yeah,
says
exactly.
I look tired, and it's like I
Yeah.
totally am.
So the funny thing about this one is I'm a domestic relations attorney and a litigator, and also I do draft these agreements. And as part of my legal services agreement, when I draft a mediation agreement or when I do a mediation, I have a joint representation clause that basically says I represent the two of you and I cannot represent one against the other. I have to disclose everything that one of you tells me in confidence to the other. There is no privacy as between you and me versus me and the other person. I represent the two of you. And if there's ever a conflict between the two of you, I cannot testify for one as against the other. I actually have like I cannot testify in any case in which you two are opposing parties.
Yeah. And I mean, I have the same thing sometimes with criminal, because sometimes you might have like husband and wife are driving along and turns out there's some heroin in the car. Well, they might be in agreement that, both of them don't want either of them to get convicted. And so there can be a situation where you can have mutual representation. But the instant one of them wants to point the finger at the other and say that was his heroin, I didn't know it was there, then I got to get off record and I can't represent either. Like, even if they agree, oh, you can just represent him. It's like, nope, can't represent either of you. It's a big deal to take that kind of instruction from someone else. And yeah. I also made a note here, and this is completely unrelated to the trial, but the art in that room was bothering me. Partially because I'm so tired that like my attention deficit was just playing crazy with my brain. But they've got all these portraits of past judges, and one of them is drawn with the eyes way too far apart.
You're talking
And
about in the courtroom right now, like the courtroom. You're talking
it's
about
right.
my previous. You're talking about my previous chief judges, the ones that I've
Yeah,
been in front of. Oh, don't tell me which portrait. Please don't tell me which portrait.
it was really bothering me because it was just like some serious Innsmouth look, and it was just like
Oh, Runkle.
once I saw it, I couldn't stop seeing it, and it's right behind the jury, and I'm like, ah.
All right, so I'm going to get you back on track here.
All
So
right.
tell me about your impressions of the judge and how she's managed the trial so far, and then particularly in the past few days.
I really like this judge. I really like this judge, and there's a few things I'll say. The first, I haven't agreed with every ruling she's made, but that is part of judging. And if I were the judge, plenty of people would not agree with every ruling I make because a lot of judging comes down to judgment calls. But I feel that she's been attempting to approach it from a fair and even-handed way. I don't think she's been biased towards either side. I feel like she's been very much you sink or swim on your own merits, and so you got to make your arguments. And that is really fantastic. The other thing is I think she treats the parties quite well. And there's a lot of judges out there who, you give somebody some power and they will like to yell at people. Even though they've got the white noise machine to just blank out all of the, their sidebar discussions, you can tell she's approaching counsel with respect and cheerfulness. So I feel like this is a really good judge, and she's really managing her courtroom very well. Uh, Everything is going pretty smoothly. I really like this judge. I really think that she is. I think she's doing an excellent job. And if I were out here, I feel like it would be an honor and a privilege to appear in front of her.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like it would be like she would be a judge I'd be really happy to land in front of.
Yeah. You
So,
like getting that assignment. And the funny thing is, you made the comment about Elaine and these blunders that these guys are making. The judge gives you enough latitude to make the arguments that you're going to make. She doesn't interject. She doesn't put her opinion. She realizes that her role is not that of the advocate, it is that of the
yeah.
judge.
Yeah, and that is I really like I really have liked her performance. I've really appreciated her in the courtroom. And, it's and I also suspect that she's sort of part of who's been marshaling the sheriff deputies there, and they've been doing a pretty good job as well. And you know, I don't necessarily agree with everything about how they've been running the line, but in terms of like running that courtroom, um, they're really, they're really efficient. They're coming in and just being like, okay, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do. We're not messing around. Somebody was asking what I'm drinking. This is sweet tea. I would drink more booze, except that when you're on this little brain power, that is gonna knock me right into a ditch. So
Yeah. Don't worry,
if you
guys. We got him. I got him some. He had some scotch when he got home to celebrate the 100K. And then he had a cocktail at dinner. So he's had a little bit, but with the sleep
if yeah,
deprivation that he's had, he'll pass out.
if you want me to have more scotch, you're not going to get the rest of this video or rest of this recap today. So the next witness was that Disney executive, who's I didn't actually record the Disney executive's name, but why? All we learned from this Disney executive is that she doesn't know what's happening at Disney. Like, okay, cool. Maybe find someone whose coworkers talk to her. Like, I just don't know what that was about. Oh, did you know anything about this? No. Oh, does that mean that there wasn't anything or you just don't know? I don't know. Okay, great. It I had a note as well that juror E at this point needed a Snickers and a Red Bull because she was starting to pass out. And I get it. I was right there with her, but like it was just not a good. They didn't accomplish anything at that point. All right, so the next Ellen Barkin, who everybody wants to know about. Um, she was a real clown show, and I don't think she accomplished much of anything. Um, the gallery was really amused, and I think the jurors were too, when she redacted romantic to sexual in a real hard break.
Oh, I didn't
Like,
catch that part.
oh, she was talking, they were asking if this relationship became romantic, and she's like, yes, it did. And she's like, actually, no, let me correct that. It's not romantic. It was sexual. And
Runkle, hang on. You gotta read that super chat.
Oh, yep, I think I do.
That one you have to read. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't know how to pronounce the name. I guess M116121. Thank you for the incredibly generous super chat. As another said, her name is Disney's Middle Finger. Yeah,
That's okay. That was worth the money. Yeah, that's good job.
she just she, she didn't have anything that she knew. But yeah, Ellen Barkin got up there. That really hard correction to sexual amused everybody. Juror F was staring up at the ceiling, and he's not been a terribly emotive guy, but at this point, he was just staring up at the ceiling. Um, and all they got out of her was really that he was drunk and high a lot, but that he didn't change much when he was drunk or high. He didn't like switch on or off. It was just that he got high. So that was a point against. Hey, thank you. That was a point against what Amber Heard's team has been arguing this whole time. So I guess good job calling a witness to say that your argument is crap. And the big reveal is that he threw a bottle, but not at her, near her, because he was upset about somebody else entirely. So it's not even a domestic thing. It was an argument with his friends, and it was a toss into the wall. Okay. Um, ooh,
This is to the same jury that has heard like bottle like things and like strangulation things and like that's what
yeah,
they've been hearing up to this point, and then he threw a bottle against the wall.
yeah, it's so weak. You've been arguing, like we've been talking about fingers coming off and, really serious
Don't get
assaults. And
demonetized. Careful. Don't get
yeah, I,
demonetized.
I'm going with really serious, and I'll do a hand gesture. It's
I gotta monitor you, buddy. Like it's sleep deprivation, and it gotta keep you on
you're
track.
quite right. People, you do not realize just how little sleep I'm running on. Because it's not just like the 5 hours of sleep this morning, it's the fact that like every night I've been racking up sleep debt, and I'm feeling pretty pickled. But yeah, I mean, there just wasn't anything out of that. And it's it's really anticlimactic. Like when I heard that they're bringing in one of Depp's previous girlfriends, and this is, a witness that Amber Heard is calling, I was thinking, oh shit, like this could be real bad. Because if her allegations were bad, that's a real, and then it's this nothing burger. And I'm going, okay,
I mean, there's also something a little bit that I found kind of weird is you've got this previous ex sexual partner, and it's Ellen Birkin.
yeah,
And I mean, this isn't knocking the woman at all. She's a good actress, she's wonderful. But you've got this dichotomy or this split between Ellen Birkin on the stand and Amber Heard at the table, and there's something that just feels a little off. Just in yeah, it I didn't see anything from that. It made no sense.
and it kind of feels like like maybe Johnny Depp has a type, and that type is weird. Because
And crazy apparently.
yeah, Ellen Barkin just came off as kind of weird and you know
Maybe bitter that
emotionally
Johnny is
drained.
I mean, maybe bitter that Johnny was with someone who was younger and possibly more attractive and didn't really
Yep.
like the fact that he went that direction and not with her.
Well, and she notes that he ghosted her hard, and I was going, okay, that's got to have stung, doesn't it? Yuri, thank you for the very generous super chat. It said great work, Runkle. Thank you. Um, yeah, I just yeah, we don't have too many more witnesses to get through, although they were doing them sort of rapid fire today. And
All right, speed round.
so the next
Give me the punch list.
We've got Alan Blousting. That was the psychiatrist. And a lot of people were pissed at him, and they shouldn't be, because you got to remember the reason why he's testifying here is because he was required to. And the reason why he would have been required and able to testify about all of this is I'm sure that Depp's team agreed to allow him to be tested or testify. Now you might say, why would you ever do that? Well, because they probably said, listen, we know that the psych issues are in record. So instead of doing a psych assessment, you can just have the psychiatrist information. And that's probably the deal that got made there. And I'm going to say, I think that this one was a big blunder again for Amber Heard's team. Why they called him, I don't know. Because, I mean, he did a really good job at selling the notion that a rock star slash movie star consumed drugs. But again,
Well, and therapists they're the worst type of witnesses because they never want to tell you anything. They don't want to say anything because that's their job to maintain that confidential relationship. Um, so they're never going to give it to you voluntarily. So you got to drag it out of them, which makes you look like the a-hole doing it. And then they're resistant, and then they couch all of their testimony in the softest light. And yeah, this therapist is sympathetic towards Johnny Depp. Of course he is. He's Johnny Depp's treating therapist.
yeah. And at several points when he was testifying, the jury was sad and sad for Johnny Depp. When he's talking about how Johnny Depp had all of these horrible traumas to get through, the jury was sympathetic. They're feeling sad for Depp. And I'm going, how are you spending all of this effort and your precious minutes to make the jury feel sympathetic to Depp? That is not where you want them. If the jury is sympathetic to Depp in a case where you're alleging really horrible stuff that I won't say because YouTube will be pissed, you are this should never be possible if you're not screwing it up. So I don't understand. I was kind of interested when I was looking over his bills. Um, there's the whole meme of men will do X instead of going to therapy. And I'm like, yeah, men would rather have tens of thousands of dollars than go to therapy.
By the way, shout out to DUI guy who's sitting in the chat right now, stirring things up.
Oh, hey, DUI guy. Yeah, so it's yeah, I thought it was really, really bad. And then it got into this point later where he was going through and trying to parse out his notes years after the fact. And they're like, so you made this squiggle here. What does that mean? And they're like, he's going, I don't know. It's a squiggle. Maybe it means this. And that part was super boring. And the jury was lost and I was tired. So, yeah. Next up, we have Eric George. And Eric George is something else, isn't he?
Wait, who is Eric George? I didn't know this, Gordon.
He's the lawyer that Amber Heard hired to totally de-defamation the case.
Oh, okay. Was he? How long was he on for? Because at this point, aren't we getting to the quick?
Yeah, he was pretty quick. Okay. And so his testimony was basically that Amber Heard went to him in order to. She had this article she wanted to write, and he has experience with defamation cases, and so they went over it together to try to make sure that no defamation case could be brought.
Oh, this is super lawyer guy.
Yes. And that was one of the things that just made me go, what the hell?
That's a fail on Elaine's part. That's on her. That's not on him because look, marketing that stuff out, that's fine. but you don't go and like advertise it in a conversation or explain what it is. Like,
Yeah. So for the chat, there's this thing, super lawyers, and there's a way to become a super lawyer, and that is you pay a fee.
oh
It is
no, Runkle, you don't have to pay a fee. Like all if you're nominated by enough people, you just are. Like,
ah
so I was at some point a couple years ago, and then in order, like people just keep nominating each other and other people. So it just keeps on naming you. But I don't go out there and like tell people, look at me, I'm smart. No, no, no one actually goes out and advertises it like as I am this special person.
yeah.
Elaine brought it out of him. Like Elaine was like, well, doesn't that make you special? I'm like, maybe don't make him say the most uncomfortable things out loud.
Yeah. So some lawyers will put that they're a super lawyer or whatever in their advertising because clients may not necessarily know that that's kind of a weird thing. Lawyers, if you find a lawyer who tells other lawyers that they're a super lawyer, they are almost certainly a douche. And yeah, they are just really, wow. So yeah, that I was just like, are you kidding me? This guy's bragging about being a super lawyer. Um, like, come
Well,
on.
two other lawyers, and it looked uncomfortable when he did it. Like, look, that's fine to put on your masthead. That's cool and everything. But if I'm in a
Yeah,
group of lawyers, the last thing I'm saying is, look at my credentials.
it's like the guy who, yeah, it's like if you're in your 50s and you still brag about being, the high school quarterback. It's
Yes,
got
great
that kind of
analogy,
vibe to
man.
it.
It's how many hours of sleep have you gotten? You made that up? It's 11 o'clock at night. That was fantastic.
So, um, the jurors weren't writing; they were bored. They didn't terribly care for this guy, and frankly, my read on what it sounded like is basically. So she wrote this thing that she thought was super defamatory, and it totally was. And then we tried to edit it enough to make it sound like it's not defamatory and kind of loophole it. And I think I loopholed it real good. So if you could please not find defamatory, that would be real cool because I am a super lawyer and I am super important.
Mhm.
Like,
How'd that go over for him? Because it looks like she got sued for defamation.
yeah, and I'm just sitting here going like, how often I have to consult some high-priced lawyer to not defamatory my comments? Oh right, never, because I don't defamatory things up. He did not come off as likable. He did not come off as, anything. He just came off as an arrogant prick. And, you know, like, and he might be a super nice guy, but he really didn't present that way. And, part of that I think is on Elaine in her questioning. Like, so tell us about all of your awards. Nobody gives a fuck. Like, it's just sorry.
It's true. You hit the nail on the head. It's perfect. I
You
love it.
know, tell us about how every other lawyer loves you and wants to be you or have your babies. Like, it's just like, come on. So, yeah, I don't think he achieved anything. If he moved things at all, um, then it was not in Amber Heard's direction. Then we had Jessica Kovacevic, who really, I saw the jurors making skeptical expressions, like when she says that Aquaman 1 was the most successful of all time ever. Like the most successful movie of all time ever, I think was the
All
quote.
right. Now I will defend Aquaman. Like and I think Hogue made this point earlier. It's not a bad movie. Like I
It's not a
like it.
bad
It's
movie.
when I want
And
to
it made
melt my
a bunch of
brain, like I
money.
throw it on in the background. But I mean,
It made a
yeah,
bunch of
but
money as compared to DC Comics movies.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
DC Comics movies have been struggling compared to, say, Marvel comic movies,
Yeah.
and also to many other movies that they are competing
Did
with.
she
So
did she really try to like say like it was better than like Avengers, like Infinity War or whatever it was?
she
Like,
was trying to say it was like the best movie of all time. And, I'm looking at it. It's the highest grossing film based on a DC Comics character,
okay.
which is real fucking specific. It's the fifth highest grossing film of 2018
Oh shit. Okay, now it's getting worse.
and the 24th highest grossing film of all time, which sounds pretty good.
I mean, that's cool. Pad the stats. That's awesome, man. You're in the 25th or 24th of all time. But I mean, that's a pretty big gap between you and number one.
Yeah, like she makes it sound like it's number one. And I'm pretty sure Juror G has seen Aquaman and was like, nah, bro. Like,
Yeah. And if Juror I was ever thinking about seeing Aquaman, he's not now.
yeah, he's like, oh, she's in it? Nope. So, oh, and I got DUI guy waiting here. We're just gonna add him here.
Hey, buddy.
How you
There
doing?
we go. What's up, you guys?
How's
I'm
it going?
doing
You wanted
pretty
to join
good,
in
man.
on the Bro Fest here?
So yeah,
Well,
we're
I
just sort of
finally,
talking about. Oh, go ahead.
unlike Runkle here, I finally was able to catch up on my sleep at least a little bit. I'm still not all the way
Oh,
caught
you
up, but
bastard.
I'm definitely not suffering as bad as you, buddy. I feel for you.
Yeah, I'm.
I'm keeping
I'm in a
him.
very special state, and Rob is basically making sure I don't fall downstairs or eat
Yeah,
paint.
like there's a yardstick on the back of his chair that's like holding his back up so that he doesn't keel over right now.
Tip over on the back. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, the other thing that was really funny about this particular witness in terms of the jury, um, so there's this moment when Elaine comes back onto the recorded deposition because she was on and then she's off and then she comes back on, and a couple of jurors just show this really visible visceral dislike when she comes back on the thing. So juror A went, ugh. And juror H, the 50-something woman, went like and sort of scrunched up her face into this disgust look. And this is before Elaine has even managed to finish asking a question. Like it's not that they didn't like the question. It's just that they didn't like her personally. And I mean, that can happen, right? And it's almost kind of expected in some trials. Like if you're dealing with allegations of very serious violence, they'll tend to dislike the lawyer if they dislike the client. Oh, right.
But it's not
That's a
just
bad
that, Ian. I mean, remember how yesterday or the day before, whenever it was, where she just could not ask a proper question. I mean, for
You
the
mean
love of God.
in redirect?
In redirect of Amber
Oh my
Heard, I
God.
think it was Tuesday. Like, woman, get your shit together. You're trying to ask a question that is improper of the wrong witness. I mean, I saw what she was trying to introduce, like, her computer. She had like a diagram of like the inside of the human skull and like nostrils or something like that. She was trying to like show that maybe it was Amber Heard's diagram. I don't know. I don't know because we never got to that point.
This was the day you made it in and Runkle and I didn't, because you were sitting right there and you could see the screen. And this was when she
That
was
was
in
Tuesday.
redirect. And that was when Judge Askarati said, what, if anything, isn't a magic catch-all that makes it not leading?
And she said, yes, it is.
Yeah. Yep. She was trying to introduce I think, a medical record of Amber Heard's alleged like broken nose or whatever the fuck. And I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on your channel, Ian.
You certainly
Runkle's
are.
done it like 9 million times. He's
Okay,
delirious.
just want to make sure because I already learned most of them, but like Hogue, I know Hogue is very family friendly. Anyway, she was trying to introduce, I think, a medical record of possibly Amber Heard's nose to the jury, and the judge was not having it. It's the wrong witness. It's the wrong document. You're not following the rules of evidence. And she was trying, like when she said, "I'm trying, Your Honor," in her head, I think Elaine was going like, what is the question I need to ask to get this introduced? And there isn't one. It doesn't
Yeah.
Stuck on
exist.
buffer mode. Yeah, she was on
It-
buffer
Yeah.
mode, like that little wheel spinning, like in her head it was like the wheel spinning, and it's just not loading.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
just you need to actually, if you want to call medical expert evidence, you need the actual doctor, please. Like, oh, and they did that with Jessica Kovacevic as well. Like they were trying to have her testify about bots, and her testimony about bots was, well, I know it's a bot because I looked at it and it looks like a bot. Come on.
Dude,
Like,
can we get this Runkle, like this version of Runkle, every day? Well, no, because that would mean he wouldn't ever sleep. Like he would
I
never
would-
be sleeping.
I would die. I was just like, how? And I think that the only reason why they weren't objecting to it is just because they didn't want to make it look like it was. They didn't want to make it look like it was a bad thing, right? It's just like, okay, why object to this? Because it's not actually achieving anything. And she also, like, she's the agent. Nobody's actually mentioned it, but I suspect everybody knows that agents get paid a portion of their client's income. So an agent hyping up their client, unheard of. I was just like, this really is not. I didn't feel like it was actually selling well to the jury there in terms of that, but yeah, it was bizarre.
You have to. I may have already missed it if you talked about it. I'm sorry, but I have to hear today's highlight. Okay, from what I hear, one of the lawyers for Johnny Depp asked, and I saw the clip. I saw the clip and like a second of reaction, so I want to hear the full story. When he asks one of the witnesses, and again, I haven't been able to follow it today, so fill me in. When he asks about terms that have been used to describe Amber, and one of the terms that he says, one of them is Amber Turd, correct?
Oh yeah,
And the
this was
witness
Ian's
says
favorite
yes.
part of the day. Yeah.
It's
it
actually
had
my
to be.
second favorite part of the day.
What? Well, okay, so hold on, back up.
Hey, yeah.
First,
How does something overtake Amber
How
Turd?
do you top that? What is number one, Ian?
Amber Heard perjury. Amber Heard perjury. Amber Heard
Okay, that's
perjury,
pretty good
Amber
too.
Heard perjury.
That is pretty good. That is pretty
Can
good.
we call it a tie? Can we call it a tie?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, the potty mouth in me really does like being able to. I mean, there is a certain guilty pleasure to it when you can drop, sort of forbidden no terms into court, because, normal. I said it before, I'll say it again. There is no way normally that you could call the opposing party a turd.
Oh, but now you can in closing argument of this trial, and you better believe that it's happening multiple
Yeah.
times.
Open that door.
Now you've just put that on the table and you've basically said, go ahead and call my client a turd.
How did they get that in? What was the context of the question to allow for that? Because I thought that was like
that it's a trending hashtag and that it's Johnny Depp's fault.
Yep.
So okay, hold on.
This guy,
Is
no,
that-
let me catch you up, because this
Please,
expert was
yeah.
testifying. He was testifying to viewing trends on Twitter in relation to the statement made by Johnny Depp's attorney. And basically, after the statement, that there were these trending tags that led to a lot of disparaging comments towards Amber Heard. And he was drawing the connection between the statement and the disparaging tags and how he identified the disparaging tags. And part of that led to the questioning of, well, what did you call a disparaging tag? And then it's like justice for Johnny Depp. And that led to the question of, well, aren't there other disparaging tags like Amber Turd?
Oh my God, that
Now
is
you
fucking
have-
brilliant.
Yeah, pretty good move, right?
Wow.
Well, it was actually
it kind of like led the jury into a direction that is like so close to like almost bringing in stuff that is currently happening, but it's not, because you're talking about the past.
Well, the thing is that the
Brilliant
expert
lawyer.
actually looked at Amber Turd as one of the hashtags that he was pointing out as a negative one.
And he put it in his report.
He put it in his report. It was up on the screen. Like,
Oh, nice.
along
Why
with
did that? Oh.
And how did
I
the
love when
jury
nobody
react? And now
likes
the million-dollar
Amber,
question: when that came in, what did they look like? What were they doing?
I missed the jury at that particular second because I
Oh
saw something
no!
else.
James,
I was
someone had to have seen
watching
Oh,
them. James probably saw them.
James
We can
was
get it
right
from
there. I
James.
saw James's face. He just did this. He was like,
I was watching Amber.
James does that a lot.
"Yeah, he does."
Amber's reaction to that was real funny.
Oh
Um,
God.
What was her
so
reaction?
she turns over to look at him. You can see like the muscle in her jaw is just clenched solid, and she's blinking repeatedly.
Mm.
She just hated that. And so I'm sitting there going, the other hashtags, she didn't like hearing them, but Amber Turd really annoyed her. So I made sure to
Yeah,
post on Twitter, hey guys, she really doesn't like the Amber Turd hashtag. So
dude.
be careful with this information.
Self-inflicted wound on one of the biggest publicly televised trials of the century to every known corner of the planet, streaming live and then replayed 9 million times. Hashtag Amber Turd getting repeated over and over again. Yeah,
Why
I'd be
would you
pissed too.
tell why would you
Mhm.
tell an annoyed public exactly what pisses you off? Like this is exactly the insults that tick me off. So but yeah, that I think was my second favorite after they called the lawyer to say, "Hey, I am a lawyer and I think Amber Heard committed perjury." And I'm going to say it about 16 times. Like it was so bad today. It just felt like Amber's team just didn't really remember which side they were on and thought they could, because a lot of this stuff is just stuff that Depp's team would have loved to call as evidence. Whoops. I'm trying to star super chat so I don't lose them so I can cover them later. But yeah, and just like wouldn't you just love to be able to call the opposing side a turd and to also tell wouldn't you also just be able to, or to love to be able to tell the jury, listen, 100,000 people are on Twitter are demanding justice for Johnny Depp.
I don't know, but I think DUI guys thinking of how to work that into his next cross of a cop. Like, how can I call this guy a turd on the stand?
Oh,
I
well,
may
more
have
like a liar, less than a turd. Because turd,
Yeah.
they can live with.
Yeah,
Lying sack of shit is a little bit different.
Like perjury. Anyone?
There you go.
I may have had some trials with police officers where my client said something rude to the cop. And then, of course, I get to say, is that when he called you a whatever, whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And the officer's like, yes, that is exactly when he called me the whatever, whatever. The flip side of that is I had a person, and this was a self-defense slash, mutual fight kind of scenario. And the other guy had approached and was saying some very hostile, racist words towards my client, which I'm not going to repeat because YouTube will have opinions about them. But I was like, so this is when you called my client the N word, yes? And he says, no. And I go, what? Because there's several witnesses who heard it. And he says, I didn't call him the N word. And I'm like, oh, this fucker's going to make me say it. So I had to say the word, and said, this is when you called him a. And he's like, yes, that is what I said. I'm like, so that he was just like being a bit of a dick about it. But I was like, okay, fine. And then I made him repeat it about 18 times, and the judge hated him. Yep, DUI guy seems to be frozen.
No, he's working his way to a conversation. He's got it. I think he's got it. Shout out to that umbrella guy in the chat. You come along to watch the slaughter, and we love it.
Hey, awesome.
Today I had a very interesting thought that
do tell, Larry.
I wanted to share with you guys in the crowd. So there were several moments that obviously stick out, and I haven't shared this with YouTube yet. I just haven't had the time. I have 2 planned live streams when everything kind of slows down. Of course, I have to talk about Tuesday because I was the only one there from LawTube, so that is still on my to-do list. And then, of course, standing in line and all of that, just to give the recap of the story. So those 2 are in the works, you guys. I promise they're coming. I just haven't had time. I've been traveling. But here's the thought. There were certain moments in the trial, and the most notable one that everybody was talking about on Tuesday, of course, is when Vasquez called Amber out on the stand, point blank, when she said, Johnny Depp got you the role in Aquaman, didn't he? And she just, went nuclear. Excuse me, this self-entitled, self-righteous reaction of like, how dare you even, like, listen, honey, like, you didn't earn this. It was handed to you on a silver platter and you took it. But that is okay. That is okay. And I wonder, and this is the thought, right? What if Amber Heard was a human being, like a decent one or something of that nature? I know, very hard to imagine. But let's say on cross-examination, Vasquez like fired that fucking question and was like, Johnny Depp got you that role in Aquaman, didn't he? And she would be like, yeah, of course. He helped me out. Thanks to Johnny, I received a lot of things, and that was one of them. And if she kind of was more like that during her cross-examination, like took the punches rather than trying to punch back and just kind of rolled with them, I think this would have been a completely different case.
But that's also kind of the thing with Vasquez's strategy that I thought was so great. Like she knew that Amber
she knew where the soft spots was.
She knew that she couldn't not do it. And the way that she came straight into that, like immediately going after her, like that's you admitting to abuse, and then getting her on the defensive, like, no, that's me standing up to the person that abused me. It was right off the bat, man. She came straight in, getting her on the defensive and getting her fighting her back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the other thing is it just shows how little humility she has. Because when somebody says, I had somebody who came at me on Twitter and they're like, yeah, you've only got your channel because of Rekieta. And I'm like, kinda, yeah. He gave me a tremendous
What's wrong with that?
Nobody gets to anywhere without, help. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, hey, if Depp got you a role in Aquaman, like, fucking own that.
But man, you got 119,000 subs because you're you, and you have 37,000 people in the chat because you're you. So
but
yeah,
also
you got your start.
Of other people, right? So it's like, I'm not going to pretend that I just exploded out of nowhere because I it's like partially it's because I got people like yourselves here who can, like, I couldn't run this live stream tonight without without you helping me out here because I'm just so dead.
Dude, like, tired Runkle is the best Runkle. Like, I need this Runkle more.
So far, I agree from what I've seen.
Well, I will have to try to be more like tired Runkle normally, but I'm just so exhausted.
Well, no, we're gonna try it. We're gonna try and convince the missus to let you out of Canada for closing arguments.
I'm gonna try to see if I can make that happen because.
Which is why the chat sending love his direction right now is great, because he can go and buy flowers and buy all these wonderful things and say, look, honey, the chat loves me. I need to go back and watch closing arguments because the chat needs me there, because we do.
Yeah, no, and it's been such a wild trial because some of this stuff I just never thought I would see in an entire legal career.
Yep.
Like, hey, I'm going to call this witness to accuse my own client of perjury. Wow. Like, just wow.
Well, so let's let you wind down a little bit, because you're going to pass out on screen. Larry, I think you had an announcement for the chat about next week.
Yes, so it's officially official. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I thought my stream cut out for a second. Yes, it's officially official. This Sunday, I'm flying back to Virginia, and I'm going to be getting back in line at probably about 1 a.m., give or take. So I'm trying to get in touch with Nurse Liz because I'm going to need somebody to hold a place for me. Maybe if they get there around 8 p.m., that might be a safe bet. I've been calculating.
Nope, earlier.
But I'll
Not
get
on
there.
that day.
Not on that day. Earlier.
No, Runkle.
Nope.
Okay.
You're gonna have to just go to the group chat or go to the group text. Runkle's got details on it. We're not going to disclose details on the stream because we've got the live
That's fair.
password.
Yeah.
Okay, so whatever. Earlier, we'll figure it out. I'll get there around 1, so you only need to hold the place until 1. The closer to the front, the better, because then I can get a closer seat to the front. And I will be streaming probably all night, like we did that first night on last Monday. And then I'll be tweeting updates throughout the day. And I plan on being there all week if I can make it happen. So we'll go all the way through the rest. Well, basically the remainder of the trial. So, and if I can muster it, I will also live stream updates on my channel or someone else's channel in the evening. So we're going to have the full 9 yards, you guys.
Yep. And
This
I'm going
last
to do
week.
everything. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that come Friday for closing arguments, that the media gets the same shot that they got on that day when all three of us were in court. Boom, boom, boom. 1, 2,
Yes.
3, sitting in that bench. So we're going to have to work on Runkle and Mrs. Runkle. We love you. Please lend us Logulus for one more hearing. But yeah.
Release the elf.
I will have to see what I can do. All right. So I think I've covered all the witnesses here. The one last thing I do want to sort of comment on is, so they spent the entire day scoring on their own goal. And after spending all that time just really accomplishing negative things, what do we see? Well, then the judge is like, okay, well, after you've done all that, let me tell you what I'm trying to catch a super chat, but the chats keep coming in and now I can't. I think it's lost to time. All right. I'm just trying to
Good
star
problem
things
to
as
have.
we go. It is, but it's also
Focus
like
on your words. Focus on your words. Focus on your words.
all right, I'll get to that later. So then the judge is like, hey, just as a reminder, you have limited time. And let's go through the time. And I was going, okay, I want to see how this is, dividing up. And it was plaintiff, 42 hours and 45 minutes used. Defense, 53 hours and 1 minute used. Which means that remaining time is plaintiff, 18 hours and 30 minutes left. And defendants, 8 hours and 14 minutes left.
Wow.
Yep.
That's a 10-hour gap.
That is massive. That means you get you get like 30 minutes per witness in my rebuttal case, basically. And I'm going to make you use every minute, and I'm going to put someone up that you can't cross.
Yep.
Oh my God, the possibilities are endless.
Kate
Right.
Moss, last
And
witness, no cross.
Yeah, literally. You're done. That's it.
yep.
Oh,
And
wow.
I mean, it'd be one thing if we were talking about like a plaintiff's counsel group who hadn't shown themselves at being expert on strategy, but they have been. They've been like Amber Heard's team is sitting here playing checkers and they're playing Go. This is we may see them very strategically burning up Amber Heard's time and then using the remainder of it to just run the clock.
Yeah, just pick like your first rebuttal witness. You have them on the stand for like 3 or 4 hours, and so they have to burn like 3 of theirs, and then then you just weed them out.
And call a couple witnesses who can say a couple of damaging things in 30 minutes.
Now,
and
does
just be
that
like,
clock include closing arguments? I'm sorry, Ian.
no,
Nope.
Or no?
Closing is a
no.
dedicated day. They get half to they so the morning, from what I've heard, is the morning is closed. So they both get like, so the judge will break it up before morning break, after morning break, and then after lunch recess.
An hour and a half each, basically.
She's gonna
Yeah.
she's gonna panel the jury and send them back.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
they could very intentionally run out the defense's clock because you put a witness on, you get them, you do direct for 30 minutes and you get some bad things out, and then the cross will take longer than that because you're just not necessarily going to be able to get to anything meaty in 30 minutes because they don't have Camille Vasquez's ability to just come in like, a freight train.
Yeah.
Just like,
and
okay, we'll burn up your time and then we can, Kate Moss with no cross. Whoever else we want to use.
Nice rhyme there, Ian.
that was good. That was completely unintentional. He's realizing it's unintentional because now he's about to laugh his ass off. There he goes.
Yes.
He's dead. He's gone.
Cade Moss with no cross. That's what's up.
Oh, hey Ian, if you don't have merch yet, that needs to be it. Kate
Oh,
Moss
there
with
it
no
is.
cross.
I don't have merch, but the problem is that all the merch companies sell crap, and that's kind of that's a rant I have.
Ian's a lawyer. He doesn't need that junk. He's gonna make all his
doesn't need
money
He's
in
got it.
law. Yep.
Yeah.
I will probably try to figure out merch, but I just want to I don't want to sell anything as merch that I wouldn't want to wear or use myself.
I mean,
That's
I'd wear
fair.
Kate Moss with no cross.
Yeah,
I would too.
It would just be, and you know what the best part of that would be? Just the absolute best part. Elaine's face as you just called witness after witness, and she can't do shit about it.
You know what? If I was Elaine, I would do. I would turn to my right and look directly at Amber Heard and just stare at her as all the witnesses are called, and I have no time left. Because then you look at today's evidence in that context, and you see what today was. It was a freaking dumpster fire. Like that, they lit their.
That's what
case
I've been
on
hearing.
fire with today's evidence. You
Yeah,
got nothing, and you burn time.
They didn't just get nothing. Several of their witnesses were major own goals, and they're burning their own time to do it.
And they were live witnesses or depositions?
Both.
Both.
All except for one. There was one live witness, right? One live
Yeah.
witness, all depot designations, and they were not good looking. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, they just did not play well.
And
Yeah.
but if there were depositions, they knew ahead of time what
I
is on
know,
that
which
video.
makes the-
Yes.
Why the fuck would they play that then?
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's a slam dunk on your own damn case. So this was a dumpster fire and burned time. Did nothing but burn time.
The only explanations are either Elaine got a bunch of Amber Heard's drugs and just had a party, or Amber Heard is directing Elaine to do things that are a bad idea. And I think that the latter one is what's going on.
There's a third option. There's a third option that today's testimony was not for the court. Today's testimony was for the court of public opinion, which is what I thought about calling the lawyer to testify, to basically have to sit there and say, I invoke privilege, or yes, I accept the assertion of privilege, because they can then go back to the court, to public opinion, and say he hid behind his lawyer and didn't admit to all the wrongdoing. Like, so your case is going down and you light it on fire.
I have a fourth opinion then. I think Amber Heard's lawyers are realizing how bad their case is. So mid-trial, they're trying to switch to the winning team without Amber Heard noticing. So they're like, okay, we want to have jobs after this trial is over. So we're going to slowly meander into Johnny Depp's camp mid-trial and hope nobody notices.
You see Rottenborn sitting in the back row, like sliding over next to the Discovery guys, like as the trial goes on.
They're just kind of trying to move their chair over slowly.
Oh,
that's hilarious.
What a nightmare.
Yep.
I'm just like, how does this happen?
They had the possibility of making today a good day. They just chose to not make today a good day. They had it teed up, and if they had the right witnesses teed up, they could make today a good day. and today was just my case is going sideways, and I can't get it back on track.
It was like there's some of that evidence. There was just no way that it was ever going to be good, and I mean, I really hope Elaine has every instruction that she's been given in writing, because you know that Amber, if she loses, is going to turn around and sue the shit out of Elaine.
What, 1142 motion, ineffective assistance, malpractice? What else can she go after her for?
Whatever she thinks might stick.
Best of luck.
There's no question
mean-
she's going to blame them for the loss because she can't take ownership for the life
Yeah.
of me. But
I don't think that I'm not saying that I think it would be a meritorious lawsuit.
But
I
you
just-
think she's still going to file it just for the sake? But she doesn't have any money to hire lawyers to sue these lawyers unless you're going to go pro se,
Nope.
which, again, I don't see that happening.
And a judgment against her on this charge is non-dischargeable in bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm going to make a video about that. We're going to break it down, explain why it's non-dischargeable, and how a bankruptcy would actually work.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yep.
not going to be an instructional video for Johnny Depp's attorneys at all, I promise.
You know what? I don't think they need any instructions there.
Not based on what we've seen.
Absolutely not.
No, I mean, I think that they could teach courses. It's just,
Yep.
They've been just brutal. But maybe Amber Heard could pay off the judgment with a big pledge, and then she'll be good.
No, Judge,
You gotta warn me before you drop hot shit like that, Ian. You can't do this to me.
No, Judge, I paid it. No, Miss Heard, you pledged it. Yes, I paid it. No, Miss Heard, you pledged it. What's the difference? I pledged it.
Well, one sends you to jail and the other one doesn't. Guess which one you picked?
Did you all see that there might be, again, it's a huge might, but there might be a probe into Amber Heard perjuring herself about, in the UK court, she said, I donated it, and now it's like, no, I pledged it. It's like, wait a second, you made it clear that the money has been given, and now it's like, has it?
Well, and this
it
was
has
actually a major component of the UK court's ruling, because one of the things they found is that she's super credible because she has no financial interest, because she doesn't care about the money, because she gave it away.
Oops.
And so, like, I don't know what the appeals rules or what the UK's rules are, if that allows them to open up that decision or if that's possible. But I mean, the perjury aspect is, I think that's worth going after. And I mean, the funny thing is that then if you're, in the Hollywood community and you really want to troll her, you can start offering her movie roles that will be filmed in the UK.
Well, you can pledge the movie roles.
I was just about to say, just pledge her movie roles.
No, you can straight up actually offer them and just be like, filming's going to be in the UK, and so you're going to have to dodge the bobbies.
Yeah,
because,
yeah, that's pretty good too.
That is good.
I mean, the US doesn't extradite their own citizens, I take it.
Not for a perjury charge.
Well, perjury is a felony, but that's like, you're talking country to country extradition, which state to state is one thing, but I think country to country, it has to be a little bit more severe than that, like a violent felony or something. I don't know the rules on that. I don't do international law.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting. It would really limit her travel plans. And the other wonderful thing about that kind of thing is that you always have to worry if you fly anywhere, because if your plane gets redirected, sometimes you can end up in places you don't want to be. And this is an interesting thing for Canadians who happen to be flying with marijuana. Because if your plane gets redirected into the States, you might want to make a stop at the bathroom in a real hurry. If you got weed in your carry-on. It's like, I just have to flush some stuff real fast.
Depends on which state you're going to.
Yeah, for anyone that's on watching this now, we do not give legal advice. That
Yeah.
we do not give legal advice.
Yeah, that's not advice, but you don't want to be in possession of shit that you shouldn't have.
By the
It's,
way, both this is both to Rob and Ian, since you guys just brought this up. Make sure to include that in your about section.
Yeah.
I know, Rob, your channel is brand new. I've had mine since the inception. Just throw
Yeah.
that in there. Everything's here, not legal advice. My opinion is not necessarily the opinion of my law firm. Once you get employees and stuff like that, so that it's all clear who's
Yeah,
who's what,
that was
who's
like the
who, and
first
what's
thing I
what.
threw in there.
Yep.
Yeah,
Smart man.
I actually got an opinion from, like, I called the practice advisors just to ask them, like, hey, I'm thinking of doing a YouTube channel. Like, what are the legal issues? And so one of the questions I asked was basically, hey, will you guys consider this to be legal advice? Because we actually have some rules about how they somewhat limit disclaimers of not legal advice. Like, a disclaimer is not necessarily effective. But the response I got was basically nobody should be dumb enough to take a YouTube video as legal advice.
Mm.
And if they are, that's on them. And I was like, cool. But I'm still putting a disclaimer in there.
They need
Because,
to
Well,
update
sure,
their
yeah.
they need to
Protection.
update their demographic data.
I mean, the internet is full of people who are exceptionally dumb. And some of them are making decisions in this trial. So,
Damn, that cuts deep, bro. That cuts deep.
well, there just is no way to. That perjury tape, they knew what's on the tape. Like, it's not like this was a surprise. It's just like they knew what it was and they ran it anyway.
All right, we need to let Runkle walk away from this trial for a few minutes. So, what do
Yeah,
you want to say, buddy?
I should probably sign out fairly quickly here.
Everyone
So tomorrow,
in the chat,
sorry.
Tomorrow's
So
no
tomorrow, no, just a hearing, no audience or whatever.
Yeah,
They're going to be
tomorrow,
arguing jury instructions.
Judge Ascarati has an 8 a.m. on the docket. I think it's arguing jury instructions, some of those objections. And then Judge Ascarati, to remind you of her other roles, she has 3 felony sentencings that day. So she's going to have a wonderful day. Yeah.
But
exactly.
nobody in the pews, like nobody's showing up for that.
No,
Or is it
I
going to
don't
be
think they're even
blocked
letting
off?
people in.
They're not letting people in. Got it.
Yeah.
But it's going to be televised, right?
No, there's no they don't televise Fridays.
But
And
arguing
ultimately,
motions. That's so fascinating.
They haven't televised any of the motions in this case. No pretrial, no mid-trial. They haven't televised those.
and if they were allowing people in, like all of that stuff, they've been turning on the white noise machine. So you'd literally just be walking into a courtroom. They turn on the white noise machine. You're just like, oh, right. I can't hear shit for however many hours.
Well, if there's nobody in there and they're turning the cameras off, then they can just argue in open court without any concern, I suppose.
Yep.
I need a press pass. If you need a press pass, Ian, that way you can get in even on that.
I looked into what they had as requirements, and I qualify under some things, but not others.
Yeah.
Okay.
Judge
It is what it
Ascarati
is. I was
actually
just throwing it out there.
Judge Ascarati actually set criteria for what counts as media for this.
Yep.
And
it's pretty effing strict.
I mean, you have to have more than 1,000 viewers every month. Check. I can hit that. You have to have an independent editor who has editorial control, which I don't, because I have editorial control over my own things, even if I hire an editor, right? There's nobody who can veto my own postings. You also have to have been covering this jurisdiction's court proceedings for at least 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was everyone. It was Court TV. That's the only one that actually meets like the full criteria.
Yeah.
Well, no, remember that one dude we ran into in the parking lot? And he's like, yeah, I got a press pass. It wasn't that difficult. And he's like, I'm an independent. I'm wondering what the hell kind of strings he pulled. We won't name names, but he's just a guy we ran into. I'm talking to the chat. Yeah. No, not the U. Was he a UK guy?
Yeah,
I
he
can't
was okay.
remember.
Taller guy.
I disliked him from the beginning because if you remember when we had the two Karens situation, the day
Yeah.
one, he beelined like to them and was talking to them. He didn't talk to anybody else the entire
Yep.
night. It was
Because we're
just
thinking-
like,
we're thinking of the same person. Yeah.
yeah,
guy.
yeah, okay. Anyway, he was bragging about it, like it's so easy to get, and I'm just like, okay, Buster, if it's so easy, get us in.
Yep. Before Runkle signs off, before he forgets, everyone who's in this chat, go like and subscribe to Runkle, like the video. Make sure you do that.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to Rob
And DUI
Law and
guy.
Lumber.
Yes. Also, I will sort of reiterate, as I said at the beginning, for all the super chats, I know I haven't read most of them. I am saving them I'll do a super chat rundown later. But if I was going to try to read super chats tonight, I would be up until, I was going to say midnight, but that is like now. So I would be up. I'd be up way past midnight, and I would basically just have to keep going until I died. And hopefully that is not something people want for me right now, because
Godspeed to you, sir. Thank you for your work
in
today.
Control of the stop button. You're in control of the stop button. We're not.
All right, I'm going to hit the stop button. See you,
Go
folks.
go get some sleep.
Yes.
See you later.
And I
Good
will
night,
see
everybody.
you guys on Monday.
See you then, buddy.